Have you ever been made to feel invisible? I have. I stood frozen in the hallway when I heard my niece giggle to her friend. Mom says if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice. Those words hit me like a knife to the heart. For 15 years, I've been their human ATM. I paid for everything. My sister Lindsay's big house, my mother's medical bills, my brother's failing business, my niece's fancy private school. And what did I get in return? Mockery behind my back. Eye rolls when I walked into a room. Dinner invitations only when they needed money. The final blow came when I found out they planned a luxury family trip to Europe using my money but didn't even invite me. Someone has to stay behind and keep the money flowing. My sister laughed to our mother on the phone. They treated me like I was invisible. Now I will show them what happens when I truly disappear. They will learn how much they needed me only when everything I provided vanishes overnight. My plan is ready. The backpack is packed with evidence of their cruelty. By the time they find it, I will be gone. They wanted an invisible man. They will get one. And the consequences will destroy the comfortable life they built on my back. I stood frozen in the hallway outside my niece's bedroom, the birthday gift still in my hand. Through the partially open door, I heard Amber's voice, high and mirthful. Mom says if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice. She giggled to her friend on the phone. The words hit me like a physical blow. I knew instantly who you was. I didn't move for several seconds. The expensive gift bag dangled from my fingers, the tissue paper I'd carefully arranged now seeming ridiculous. The watch inside cost more than most people earn in a week. I was such a fool. The hallway suddenly felt too narrow, the air too thin. I took a silent step back, then another. Looking back, I should have seen it coming years ago. The signs were always there. I watched Lindsay through the kitchen doorway. My sister poured herself wine, not bothering to set out a glass for me despite hearing my car pull up 10 minutes earlier. That slight lift of her shoulder when I arrived, her tell since childhood that my presence was an annoyance rather than a joy. I tucked the memory of Amber's words away, straightened my back, and walked into the kitchen. I placed the gift on the counter. Traffic was brutal, I said. Sorry, I'm late. Lindsay didn't look up. It's fine, Marcus. Mom's already eaten. Amber's on the phone with friends. We figured you were caught up at work again. She took a sip of wine, her eyes never meeting mine. Then, almost as an afterthought, the mortgage payment cleared, by the way, thanks. I nodded, adding nothing. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what I'd been blind to for 15 years. This wasn't family. This was a transaction. I wish I could say this revelation shocked me. The truth is, something in me had known all along. I just hadn't wanted to see it. Mom emerged from the living room, finally acknowledging my presence. There he is, she said, her eyes drifting first to the gift bag before settling on my face. We thought you might not make it. Again. The accusation hung in the air. I'd missed the last 3 family gatherings. What she didn't mention was that each time I'd been working late to afford her new medication, Lindsay's mortgage, or David's latest emergency business expense. Wouldn't miss it, I replied, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. Dinner was an exercise in restraint. I sat at the table I'd bought when Lindsay moved in after her divorce. I ate from plates I'd purchased last Christmas. I listened as Mom hinted about her upcoming medical procedure, the one my insurance would cover because I'd added her as a dependent. The specialist is so expensive, she sighed, fork pushing food around her plate. I heard the real message. You'll pay for it, won't you? I always had. I didn't know it then, but this dinner would be the last time I'd sit across from them as the man they thought they knew. The human ATM, the reliable fixer, the invisible benefactor. My phone buzzed. A text from my brother David. Hey bro, hate to ask, but can you float me till Friday? Supplier issues again. $5K should cover it. No explanation of what happened to the $12,000 I'd floated him last month. No plans for repayment. Just another withdrawal from the bank of Marcus. I texted back one word. Transferred. Amber finally joined us, sullen at being pulled from her phone conversation. She barely glanced at the gift I'd brought, tearing the paper carelessly and offering a perfunctory thanks for the watch she'd begged for months ago. "Uncle Marcus is so generous," Lindsay said, her tone suggesting this was a character flaw rather than a virtue. I smiled, nodded, and kept eating. What none of them knew was that something fundamental had shifted inside me. Those childish words, repeated with such casual cruelty, had cracked open a door I'd kept firmly shut. If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice. When I returned home to my immaculate but empty apartment that night, the silence greeted me like an old friend. I kicked off my shoes, loosened my tie, and poured myself a whiskey. For years, I'd told myself I was building something, that my sacrifice had meaning. That family supported each other, and someday they would support me. I was a successful corporate finance director. I owned my apartment outright. My investment portfolio was substantial. I had everything society told me should make me happy. But sitting there alone, I finally admitted the truth to myself. I was nothing but an ATM to the only people who were supposed to care. I pulled out my laptop and created a new spreadsheet. Column 1, financial support provided. Column 2, genuine connection received. I'd always been good with numbers. The story they told now was devastating in its clarity. Looking back, I see this as the night I began to disappear. Not yet physically, but something inside me slipped away, the part that had desperately wanted to belong. I started with Lindsay. Mortgage payments, $2,750 monthly for 6 years. Private school for Amber, $32,000 annually for 5 years. Car payments, $625 monthly for 4 years. Add in the emergencies, roof repairs, property taxes, dental work. Moving to Mom. Medical expenses insurance didn't cover, $46,000 over 3 years. Monthly stipend, $2,000 for 8 years. Condo down payment, $85,000. Then David. Failed business ventures, $230,000 over 3 years. Bail money that one time, $15,000. Rehab, $78,000. The numbers grew, stark and undeniable, over $1.3 million in 7 years. Column 2 remained empty. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I began making different calculations. The truth is, I'd always been invisible to them. Amber had simply repeated what she'd been taught, what they all believed. I thought of the European vacation I'd overheard Lindsay planning with Mom last month. First-class tickets she couldn't possibly afford on her paralegal salary. Mom had asked about me, and Lindsay had laughed. "Marcus, God, no, he wasn't invited. Can you imagine him in Paris? He'd probably just work in the hotel the whole time. Besides, someone has to stay behind and keep the money flowing." My mother's laughter through the speaker had been like acid in my veins. I finished my whiskey and made a decision. If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice. I was going to put that theory to the test. But not tomorrow, not yet. First, I needed documentation, evidence, a record of every ungrateful word, every financial demand, every casual cruelty. I needed to build my case, not for them, but for myself. For the first time in years, I felt something like purpose. Not the hollow purpose of paying other people's bills, but something colder and more precise. I added a new column to my spreadsheet, betrayals documented. Then I opened a separate document and began outlining my withdrawal strategy. I didn't know it then, but this was just the beginning. The revelation was complete. The documentation phase would begin tomorrow. Lindsay, Mom, David, even Amber, they thought they knew me. They thought they had me figured out. The reliable one, the boring one, the walking checkbook. They were about to learn how wrong they were. For the next month, I changed nothing in my routine. I paid Lindsay's mortgage on the 1st of the month. Mom's medical insurance premium cleared on the 5th. David's emergency request for $5,000 was transferred without comment on the 12th. On the surface, everything remained the same. Underneath, I was a man transformed. I bought a new phone with a recording app. I kept it running during Sunday dinners, family gatherings, even quick visits to drop off checks. Each night I transcribed key conversations highlighting the moments that revealed their true feelings. Marcus is such a robot. Lindsay told Mom, unaware I was approaching the kitchen. No wonder he's always alone. Mom sighed. At least he's good for something. They fell silent when I entered. Mom asked about my work. Lindsay mentioned Amber's science project. Neither asked about my life. I'm good at keeping my face neutral. It's a skill that served me well in corporate negotiations. Now it served a different purpose. I didn't know it then, but I was building more than evidence. I was building immunity to their manipulation. The texts came regularly, each ping a withdrawal request. From David. Hey bro, supplier issues again. Need $3K by tomorrow. From Lindsay. Amber's tuition due Friday, school's threatening late fees. From Mom. Doctor says I need additional tests. Insurance won't cover. Will explain Sunday. I saved them all. Printed them. Added them to my growing file. At the office, I worked with the same precision as always. No one noticed the spreadsheets I updated during lunch, breaks, cataloging years of financial one-way streets. What surprised me most was how easy it was to maintain the facade. I'd been performing this role for so long that it required no effort. Smile, nod, pay, repeat. Looking back, I see how I'd trained them to treat me this way. I'd made it too easy. 2 weeks into my documentation phase, Lindsay called. Amber needed braces. The orthodontist required a $3,000 deposit. I know it's a lot, she said, her voice pitched to sound apologetic. But her teeth are really bad. The orthodontist says she needs to start treatment right away. I transferred the money while still on the phone. Done, I said. You're the best, Lindsay replied too quickly. We're still on for Sunday dinner, right? Mom's making that chicken you like. I hadn't expressed any preference for Mom's chicken in the 15 years since I'd moved out. I doubted they even knew what foods I enjoyed. Wouldn't miss it, I said. After we hung up, I opened my documentation file and added a note. $3,000 for Amber's braces, October 15th. Lindsay's gratitude lasted exactly 6 seconds before changing the subject. The revelation that broke me came 3 days later. I was dropping off-school supplies for Amber, another expense I covered without acknowledgement. Lindsay didn't know I'd arrived early. The front door was unlocked, as usual. I heard her voice from the kitchen, phone on speaker. No, I already booked all our tickets to Europe. First class for you, of course, Lindsay laughed. Marcus? God, no, he wasn't invited. Can you imagine him in Paris? He'd probably just work in the hotel the whole time. Besides, someone has to stay behind and keep the money flowing. My mother's laughter through the speaker was like ice in my veins. You're terrible, Mom said, not sounding disapproving at all. But you're not wrong, though I feel a little bad. He paid for your kitchen renovation without even blinking. That's what Marcus does, Lindsay replied. He pays for things. It's literally his only personality trait. I stood motionless in the hallway, school supplies still in the bag at my side. This wasn't just taking advantage. This was contempt. I wish I could say I confronted them, that I stormed into the kitchen and demanded respect, that I threatened to cut them off unless they changed. I didn't. I silently placed the bag on the bench by the door and left. Neither of them knew I'd been there. That night I added a new column to my spreadsheet, Betrayals Documented. Then I opened a separate document and titled it, Withdrawal Strategy. I remember feeling strangely calm, as if the last thread connecting me to normal family obligation had been severed. I couldn't stop thinking about their European vacation. First-class tickets purchased with my money. Luxury hotels I was paying for without knowing it. Celebrations I wasn't invited to join. If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice. The truth was, they'd notice only when the money stopped flowing. I started with bank statements. Every transfer, every check, every bill payment for 7 years. I printed them all, organized chronologically in a leather binder. The evidence was damning in its consistency. Money always flowing one direction, support never reciprocated. Next came the recordings. I transferred them to USB drives, labeled by date with key quotes transcribed for quick reference. Marcus is such a pushover. He'll pay for anything if you mention it's for Amber. I told him Mom needed special treatments. He didn't even ask questions before adding another 10 grand. God, he's boring, but reliable, like a bank with legs. I didn't feel anger hearing these words again. I felt vindication. The clarity was almost worth the betrayal. My plan was taking shape. But I needed more than evidence. I needed to ensure they couldn't reach me once I disappeared. That meant legal protection. I'm not vindictive by nature. Everything would be done legally, ethically. They would have no recourse. Looking back, I realize how methodical I'd become. This was no emotional outburst. This was calculated justice. The next Sunday dinner was excruciating. David showed up too, rare for him unless he needed something. It didn't take long to discover what. "So, I've got this amazing opportunity," he said, fork pausing midway to his mouth. "But I need investors. Around 50,000. Short term, 6 months max. Then triple returns." The same pitch he'd made for 3 failed businesses. The same promise of returns that never materialized. "Let me think about it," I said, breaking my pattern of immediate agreement. The table fell silent. 3 pairs of eyes stared at me. "It's time sensitive," David pressed. "Could really use an answer tonight." I nodded slowly. "I'll let you know before I leave." Mom jumped in, changing the subject to her upcoming procedure, the one my insurance would cover. The conversation shifted to Amber's school performance, Lindsay's job stress, David's girlfriend troubles. Not once did anyone ask about my life, my work, my plans. I sat through it all, recording every word, now hyper-aware of the pattern I'd ignored for years. Before leaving, I told David I'd think about his business proposal more carefully. His face clouded with barely concealed annoyance. "Don't take too long, bro. Other investors are interested." I knew there were no other investors, just as I knew there wouldn't be triple returns, or any returns. I transferred the money the next morning anyway. One last payment to maintain the illusion that nothing had changed. That night, I made my first concrete steps toward disappearance. I researched properties in coastal towns 2,000 miles away. I explored LLC formation in states with strong privacy laws. I consulted my investment advisor about liquidating certain assets without triggering tax penalties. I didn't know it then, but I was building more than an escape plan. I was crafting a new identity, one where I wasn't defined by what I provided. The invisible benefactor was preparing to truly vanish, and I was surprised by how liberating that felt. That month, I documented 17 separate financial requests, 11 dismissive or contemptuous comments made when they thought I couldn't hear, 6 direct lies about how my money was being spent, all recorded, all filed, all fuel for what was coming next. The preparation phase was about to begin. Over. The next 2 months, I executed the financial foundation of my plan with surgical precision. The same methodical approach that had made me successful in business now served a different purpose. I started with legal consultations, not my regular firm where my family might have connections, but specialists 3 states away. I needed to ensure everything would be lawful. They would have no recourse against me. I want to understand my legal obligations to family members who are financially dependent on me, I explained to a sharp-eyed attorney in Denver, speaking over a secure video call. She was direct. "Unless there's a formal agreement or court order, you have no legal obligation to support adult family members." "What about moral obligations?" I asked. She smiled thinly. "I don't advise on morality, Mr. Townsend. Only law." That was all I needed to hear. I didn't know it then, but those legal consultations were the foundation everything else would build upon. Knowledge is power. I was accumulating both. Next came asset relocation. I began selling joint property investments with David. Nothing suspicious, just standard portfolio rebalancing. My portion transferred to new accounts under an LLC registered in Wyoming, a state famous for its privacy protections. David didn't even notice. He was too busy spending the $50,000 I'd given him for his latest doomed venture. My banker raised an eyebrow when I began liquidating certain investments, but I had a ready explanation. Market volatility concerns, I said, looking to diversify into more stable positions. He nodded. My financial acumen had never been questioned. Looking back, I'm impressed by my own patience. I could have cut them off immediately after hearing Lindsay's cruel words. The emotional part of me wanted to. But this wasn't about emotion. This was about justice. The college fund for Amber posed a moral dilemma. $180,000 accumulated since her birth, intended for her education. She was just a child, repeating her mother's words. Could I punish her for her mother's sins? After careful consideration, I left the fund untouched but prepared documentation of its existence. It would be her choice whether to appreciate the sole remaining support or squander it like her parents had squandered my goodwill. I purchased a modest house in a coastal town in Oregon under my new LLC. Cash transaction, no financing needed. The realtor was curious but professional. Most people want ocean views, she commented as we toured the property, set back from the shore among towering pines. I prefer privacy, I replied. She didn't ask more questions. Just another rich client with peculiar tastes. I'm not normally vindictive. I've built my career on being reasonable, methodical, controlled. These qualities served me well now. I arranged for my resignation to be processed with a generous notice period. I didn't burn professional bridges. I transferred my clients to trusted colleagues. I recommended my replacement. I negotiated a consulting arrangement I could perform remotely. All the while, I maintained the facade at home. I attended Sunday dinners. I listened to their complaints. I nodded at the appropriate moments. I paid their bills. But I was already gone in every way that mattered. The hardest part was psychological preparation. Each night, I would listen to the recordings I'd gathered, the dismissive comments, the jokes at my expense when they thought I couldn't hear, the naked financial calculations disguised as family concern. He's such a robot, Lindsay had said to Mom. No wonder he's always alone, but hey, at least he's good for something. Those words became my mantra. Yes, I was good for something, and soon they would understand exactly what that something was worth. I needed to harden myself against the inevitable manipulations to come. The tearful calls, the desperate pleas, the sudden discovery of familial affection when the money stopped flowing. Looking back, I realize I was developing immunity to their emotional weapons, like building calluses through repeated friction. 2 months into my preparation, David came to my apartment unannounced. Unusual for him. He typically only contacted me when he needed money. Bro, I've got a situation, he said, pacing my living room. The business investment, it's hit a snag. I need another 30 grand to secure the deal. What happened to the 50 I gave you? I asked, my voice neutral. He waved dismissively. Initial expenses. This is for phase 2. It's where the real returns happen. I'd heard this before, many times. Let me think about it, I said. His face darkened. There's not really time to think. I need it by tomorrow or the whole deal collapses. This was the moment I realized how complete my transformation had become. In the past, I would have immediately transferred the money to avoid conflict, to be the good brother, the reliable one. Now I simply looked at him, expression unchanged. I'll let you know by morning. He left angry. I felt nothing. I transferred $15,000 the next day, half of what he asked for. Enough to maintain the illusion that nothing had changed, but a clear signal that something was different. He didn't thank me. Just texted, need the rest by Friday. I didn't respond. The final phase of preparation involved setting up my new life. I established bank accounts that couldn't be traced to my old identity. I arranged for mail forwarding through multiple cutouts. I purchased a new phone with a number registered to my LLC. I'm methodical by nature. These preparations gave me focus. At work, I wrapped up projects, transferred knowledge, prepared transition documents. My colleagues throned farewell drinks. They said they'd miss me. Some even meant it. None of them knew I wasn't just changing jobs, I was changing lives. The last Sunday dinner before my disappearance was surreal. I sat at Lindsay's table, eating Mom's mediocre chicken, listening to David's grandiose business claims, watching Amber text under the table. They discussed their upcoming European vacation, carefully avoiding direct mentions but dropping hints. "I need to get that international data plan this week," Lindsay said to no one in particular. "The currency exchange rates are terrible right now," Mom added. "But what can you do?" I nodded, smiled, passed the potatoes. They had no idea it was the last meal we would ever share. That night I finalized my documentation package. The leather-bound ledger detailing $1,347,892 in financial support provided over 7 years. The USB drives containing recordings of their conversations about me. The neatly organized termination notices for every bill I had been paying. The documentation of Amber's college fund. And finally the note. "You wanted me to disappear. Now you'll learn what life is like without your invisible benefactor." I packed a single suitcase with essential clothes and personal items. Everything else would stay in the apartment. A museum of the life they had taken for granted. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I felt focused. Looking back, I see this period as my metamorphosis. The old Marcus, defined by what he provided to others, was dying. A new version was emerging, one defined by self-respect and boundaries. One final task remained. I set up automatic notifications for when scheduled payments failed to process. Lindsay's mortgage, Mom's insurance, David's car payment, Amber's tuition. I wanted to know exactly when they realized something was wrong. The stage was set, the preparation complete. Tomorrow, the invisible benefactor would truly vanish. And they would finally see me in my absence. On a Wednesday morning in October, I didn't show up to the office. My resignation had been processed the previous Friday. My desk was already cleared out, my access cards deactivated, my email set to auto-reply with my replacement's contact information. I woke before dawn in a hotel 3 states away. My apartment sat empty except for a single backpack left on the kitchen counter. Inside that backpack was everything they needed to understand what had happened: the ledger, the recordings, the termination notices, the evidence of their European vacation, plans that never included me, the proof of their mockery and contempt, the final note. By 9 a.m., I was on a plane heading west. By noon, I was driving a rental car along the Oregon coast. By sunset, I was standing in the empty living room of my new house, watching waves crash against distant rocks through tall pines. I didn't feel anxious, I didn't feel sad, I felt free. I've always been a forward-thinking person. It's what made me good at my job. Now it was keeping me focused on my new life rather than the wreckage I'd left behind. The first notification came at 10:42 p.m. Lindsay's mortgage payment had failed to process. My phone pinged with the automated alert I'd set up. I imagined her confusion. The mortgage had always been paid automatically on the first of the month for 6 years. She'd assume it was a banking error. She'd try again tomorrow. I slept soundly that night, better than I had in years. Looking back, I'm struck by how calm I remained throughout the process. This wasn't an emotional breakdown. This was a calculated withdrawal. The calls began the next morning. First Lindsay, then Mom, then David. I watched their names appear on my old phone screen. I didn't answer. I didn't decline. I just observed. By midday, the texts started. "Lindsay, did you forget to transfer the mortgage payment? Bank says it bounced." "Mom, my insurance premium didn't go through. Call me ASAP." David, "WTF, bro? My car payment is late. What's going on with your accounts?" I didn't respond, just documented each message as it arrived, evidence of their true priorities. By the second day, the tone changed. "Lindsay, Marcus, this isn't funny. Amber's tuition is due tomorrow." Mom, "Son, I'm worried about you. Please call. Also, the insurance company is threatening to cancel my policy." David, "Seriously, man, where are you?" The bank is calling about the car loan. Still, I didn't respond. I'm not normally vindictive, but there was satisfaction in watching the gradual realization dawn on them through their messages. The panic building with each unanswered call. On the third day, Lindsay used her emergency key to enter my apartment. I knew this because my home security app alerted me to movement. I watched through remotely connected cameras as she found the empty apartment, saw her confusion turn to concern, then to alarm when she discovered the backpack on the counter. I observed as she opened it, as she pulled out the ledger, as she read the first page detailing years of financial support, as she found the USB drives containing her own cruel words, as she discovered the termination notices for her mortgage, Amber's tuition, her car payment. Her face paled as understanding dawned. The Bank of Marcus was closed. Permanently. I didn't know it then, but this moment would be replayed in my mind many times in the months to come. Not with regret, with confirmation. She called Mom immediately, then David. Within an hour, all three were in my apartment paging through the evidence of their parasitic relationship with me, their voices raised in alarm, their fingers pointing blame at each other. "Did you know he was recording us?" Lindsay demanded of Mom, her voice shrill through my security feed. "How was I supposed to know?" Mom fired back. "You're the one who said all those things about him." "We all said things," David interjected. "But this is extreme. He's ruining us over some hurt feelings." Hurt feelings. As if I were a child throwing a tantrum, not a man reclaiming his dignity after years of exploitation. The calls intensified after that, 20, 30 times a day. Voicemails filled my inbox. Texts flooded my screen. First confusion. "Where? Are you? The mortgage payment didn't go through." Then anger. "What the hell, Marcus? Mom's medical insurance premium bounced. This isn't funny." Then panic. "Please call us. The bank is saying they're going to foreclose if we don't make arrangements." Then bargaining. "Whatever's wrong, we can fix it. Family sticks together. Please come home." Then finally, the truth. "I know we haven't appreciated you enough. I know we've taken advantage. Please, we need you. We love you." But it was too late. The words rang hollow, motivated by desperation rather than genuine realization. I read each message with detached interest, studying them like specimens under glass. I neither responded nor blocked them. I simply observed as their reality collapsed. Looking back, I see this was the moment I truly disappeared. Not physically, but emotionally. Their distress generated no response in me. I had built complete immunity to their manipulation. 1 week after my disappearance, financial consequences began cascading through their lives. Lindsay received formal notice from her mortgage company. Mom's insurance was suspended. David's car was repossessed. Amber was pulled out of private school mid-semester. I know this because they detailed every consequence in increasingly desperate messages, as if their suffering would motivate me to return, as if I still cared. I was building my new life one day at a time. I set up my home office. I began consulting remotely for new clients who knew nothing of my past. I walked the shoreline each morning, watching waves crash against ancient rocks. For the first time, in memory, I was spending money only on myself. The sensation was foreign but not unpleasant. 2 weeks in, Lindsay tried a new tactic. She sent a video message of Amber crying, begging me to come home, saying she missed her Uncle Marcus. The same niece who had giggled about my invisibility now suddenly remembered my existence. The manipulation was so transparent it was almost insulting. I deleted the video without finishing it. I'm a man who values control. For years I had surrendered it to maintain family peace. Now I had reclaimed it entirely. The power dynamic had completely reversed. At the 1-month mark, David showed up at my former workplace demanding information about my whereabouts. My replacement called to warn me. I thanked him and suggested he contact security if David returned. The desperation was escalating. Good. Lindsay's message that night was revealing. The bank is starting foreclosure proceedings. "We have nowhere to go. Mom can't afford her medications. This is cruel, Marcus. We're family." family. The word had lost all meaning. I didn't respond, but I did make one concession to conscience. I arranged for information about Amber's college fund to be sent to her school counselor. The money was still there, untouched. She could access it when she turned 18. If she was smarter than her mother, she'd use it for education rather than European vacations. By the 6-week mark, the frequency of messages began to decrease. Reality was setting in. I wasn't coming back. The river of money had dried up permanently. Lindsay's last text before the silence was the most honest communication I'd ever received from her. I didn't realize how much we depended on you until you were gone. I didn't see you, Marcus. I'm sorry. Too little. Far too late. I saved the I message with the others. Documentation of the journey from exploitation to desperation to reluctant self-awareness. Looking back, this period marked the completion of my disappearance and the beginning of my reconstruction. I was no longer defined by what I provided to others. I was becoming someone new, someone with boundaries, someone with self-respect. The invisible benefactor had vanished completely, and in his place stood a man finally visible to himself. 1 year passed. In that time, I built a quieter but more authentic life. I made real friends who wanted nothing from me except my company. I consulted remotely, earning less but experiencing more. I walked the shoreline each morning, no longer checking my phone for financial emergencies that weren't mine to solve. The constant pressure in my chest had vanished. I slept deeply without grinding my teeth. I laughed more. I spoke less. I stopped performing the role of reliable provider and started discovering who I actually was. I've always been observant. It's a quality that served me well in business. Now it helped me notice things I'd missed before. The way sunlight filtered through pine branches, the subtle variations in ocean waves, the genuine pleasure in my neighbor's greeting, expecting nothing in return. Through distant connections and occasional online searches, I learned the cascade of consequences that had befallen my former family. Lindsay had lost her house, forced to move into a 2-bedroom apartment with Amber. The foreclosure had damaged her credit beyond repair. No more luxury cars, no more private school, no more appearance of success built on my silent funding. I didn't know it then, but watching their carefully constructed facade crumble would prove oddly freeing. Not because I enjoyed their suffering, but because it confirmed I'd made the right choice. My mother had sold her condo to cover medical expenses. She'd moved in with a sister in Arizona who'd always disliked her. Now she depended on family who had no history of being exploited by her. I imagined the adjustment was difficult. David's business had finally failed completely with no lifeline to save it. According to a mutual acquaintance, he was living in his car for a while before finding work as a sales associate at an electronics store. Minimum wage plus commission. A humbling transition from his self-proclaimed entrepreneurial status. The European vacation never materialized. Their social circle, built on appearances of wealth I had silently funded, had evaporated when they could no longer host dinners or attend expensive events or contribute to group gifts. They had turned on each other, each blaming the others for taking me for granted, for pushing me away, for saying the wrong things. Their unified front had crumbled under financial pressure, revealing the hollow core of their relationships. Looking back, I realized this was always inevitable. Their connections weren't built on love or respect. They were transactional, just as their relationship with me had been. I felt neither joy nor sorrow at their circumstances, only a quiet certainty that justice had been served by simply removing what they had, never valued until it was gone. I had expected the communication attempts to continue indefinitely. They didn't. After month 3, the messages slowed to a trickle. By month 6, they'd stopped entirely. Either they'd accepted my disappearance, or they'd found new sources of support. Either way, I was no longer their concern, just as they had never truly been mine. The old me would have felt guilt at this thought. The new me recognized it as truth. I'm methodical by nature. I don't make decisions lightly. I don't regret those I make carefully. My disappearance had been calculated, considered, executed with precision. There was nothing to regret, until the day I knew would eventually arrive. I was reading on my porch, enjoying the late afternoon sun filtered through tall pines. The ocean murmured in the distance. Birds called from the forest behind my house. Peace surrounded me like a physical presence. A car pulled into my driveway, engine rumbling on the gravel. Not a local vehicle. The rental sticker was visible on the bumper. I didn't move from my chair, didn't close my book. Just watched as Lindsay stepped out looking thinner, older, her designer clothes replaced by off-the-rack basics. I've never been easily surprised. I had always known this confrontation was possible. I had prepared for it mentally, just as I had prepared for every other stage of my disappearance. She approached slowly, uncertainty in every step. I remained seated, watching her with the same detached interest I might give a stranger asking for directions. "Marcus," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "It took so long to find you." I said nothing, just observed her. The designer highlights, gone from her hair. The manicure no longer perfect, the subtle signs of financial stress etched in her posture. "We've been through hell this past year," she continued, tears forming. "We lost everything. Mom's health is worse. Amber had to change. Schools. David's living in his car." Still, I didn't speak. I'd learned the power of silence. "We didn't understand what you did for us until it was gone. We took you for granted. We were terrible to you." She reached for my hand. I did not extend it. "We're family," she whispered. "Despite everything, we can start over, we can be better. I promise we see you now." I studied her face, noting the genuine desperation, the practiced sincerity. Perhaps there was even a seed of true remorse buried beneath the urgent need that had driven her across the country to find me. I don't know if I believe in epiphanies. In sudden moments of clarity that transform a person completely. More likely, she had simply calculated that finding me was her best financial strategy, just as I had once calculated that supporting them was my best emotional strategy. We were both wrong. Looking back, I recognize this as the final test, the last opportunity to slide back into old patterns, to be needed, to be used, to matter to them in the only way I ever had. I stood up, looked directly through her as if she were invisible, and walked back into my house without a word. The door closed with quiet finality between us, the last transaction between the invisible benefactor and those who had never truly seen him until he was gone. Through the window, I watched her stand frozen on my porch. Tears streamed down her face. Her mouth opened and closed, forming words I couldn't hear and wouldn't have responded to anyway. Eventually, she returned to her rental car. She sat there, for 20 minutes perhaps, hoping I would change my mind. I didn't. Finally, she drove away, gravel crunching under tires, dust settling in her wake. I returned to my book but didn't read. Instead, I considered what had just happened. The confrontation I'd anticipated for a year, the moment when my resolve would be tested. I had passed. I felt nothing. No guilt, no regret, no longing for reconciliation. Just a quiet certainty that I had made the right choice. I'm not normally vindictive, but there was undeniable satisfaction in having her experience what I had felt for years. To be invisible, to be ignored, to be dismissed as if your existence was irrelevant. That night I sat on my deck watching the stars emerge over the ocean, the universe vast and indifferent above me. My life small but authentically mine below. For the first time, I considered the possibility that I was completely free, that the last thread connecting me to my old life had been severed, that I could move forward without looking back. The invisible benefactor had completed his disappearance. The man who remained was visible only to those who truly saw him, who valued him for his presence, not his provisions. I still send money to Amber's college fund each month, anonymous deposits that will ensure she has opportunities her mother squandered, not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but because breaking cycles requires someone to act differently. I don't know if she'll use it wisely, I don't know if she'll understand the lesson in how her family lost everything. I don't know if she'll grow beyond the entitlement she was raised with, but I've given her something her mother never gave me. A choice, an opportunity to be more than her inheritance. The rest is up to her. As for me, I've learned that disappearing isn't about becoming invisible. It's about becoming visible to the right people. To yourself, most of all. I no longer define myself by what I provide, by what I can give, by how I can fix others' problems. Instead, I define myself by the boundaries I maintain, by the respect I require, by the peace I've created. If you disappear tomorrow, no one would even notice. They noticed, but too late to matter. And in that space between disappearance and recognition, I found myself.